Yes. So, um, hello everybody. I'm hearing a little bit of a background. You're welcome. If you have another device on, Arinze, I think you may need to mute it just to be on the safe
Mm,
side. Okay, you don't. Okay.
no.
Okay. So, I'm hearing a bit of a background. Okay, so maybe I hope it's not coming from me. Let me just check that out. It may be coming from me. Okay. Hello, just to check though. Femi, can you hear us? Just give us a thumbs up so that we know that we're live. Yes, we are live. Okay, as usual. Hello, everybody, and good afternoon, and welcome to today's LinkedIn live event. My name is Sola Abulu. I'm the principal consultant of Sola Abulu and Associates, and today we're going to be talking about the value of proactive issues and reputation management. Thank you to all those who have joined. This is going to be an interactive session. We're going to be done in an hour by 2:30 West Africa time. Today I have with me in the studio Mr. Arinze Oduah. Typically, I'm the one always being interviewed, but now it's a special day. We have Arinze here with us. He's a colleague, someone that I've known for quite a while. We used to work together in the same organization many years ago. Just by way of introduction, he's a business leader and a supply chain management expert with over 36 years of experience. I mean, just think about that a bit. Working across Africa, countries in Central Asia and South America, areas of strategy, banking, procurement, materials management, logistics, health, safety and environment, sustainability, and he's been consulting and teaching. And you will see elements of this come out today. Just think about what I'm saying. You'll see elements of that come out. So he's currently the CEO and managing consultant of Motors Competential Limited. And what they do is they provide strategy, supply chain management. So a lot of the expertise that he's brought from his work working within Nigeria, with the continent and other parts of the world, he's bringing that into project management and commercial advisory services to clients in the private and the public sector, both within and outside the African continent. Arinze has a lot of rich and deep expertise as a business leader, which is why I'm bringing him here today. And this is an opportunity for us to really, as communications practitioners, have a conversation of what it means to manage reputation from a business leader perspective, and we'll just be bouncing thoughts off one another. I'm hoping that anyone who, if you're a practitioner and you're watching this, that you're going to find some words of wisdom that will help you navigate your conversation with your business leaders and find your space in whatever sector or organization or space that you're in. So this is very much going to be from a business leader's perspective. I'll be asking some questions. Arinze will be answering and providing his perspective as well. And and then we'll take it from there. And of course, we want this to be interactive. So if you have any questions in the audience, please drop them in the comments and the chats. We'll try to take them, and we'll try to respond to them within this time. So please just let us hear and give us feedback. I hope you can all hear me, thumbs up, whatever it may be. I will go and check the comments shortly, and then we can keep it going. So just Arinze, just a little bit of hello to our audience for now. Just let them hear from you before we dig into the questions.
Excellent. So thank you, Shola, and I really look forward to this session. I think you've already given me, a very sort of solid introduction. So, beside that, I think we'll have a pleasant conversation and try to dig into this subject. And I think we'll soon find that it's a subject where many people have different points of view. And as we explore those points of view, I'm sure that um, we'll learn a lot and we'll see where the conversation takes us. So I'm really, really looking forward to this session. So thank you.
Thank you, Arinze. Sorry about that. I think you heard a bit from my side that something was on. So just a little bit of context setting on our behalf. I mean, in terms, just to bring things to a point of, how would I say, how it makes sense for everybody. I always like to start off with definitions. So we're talking about issues and reputation management. So let's talk about what an issue is. An issue is something that is a matter of concern for the organization. It could be, something that happened. It could be an incident, but it has become an issue for whatever reason. And then reputation is about how people perceive you. It's the belief system, the opinions that they have about you. It's not really about what you think about yourself. In fact, reputation is 100% about external perspective. It doesn't really matter what you think, you know. So if you're talking business, brand, organization, institution, is more about what people think about you and the way they perceive you more than, you know, how you perceive yourself. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. And we're hoping that, you know, Arinze will speak to his knowledge and experience from the business leader perspective and then share, you know, a lot about what it means to manage reputation and issues and how things work in the communication space, particularly when dealing with practitioners or even as a business leader himself. And like I said, if you have any questions, please share as well. I think something that may be also important for us to look at in the we're going to touch on this a little bit as we go along is the difference between, you know, how you are perceived and how you perceive yourself, your brand being an expression of, you know, your identity, and, you know, the reputation being not just the brand but everything, the way others see you, so everything that that then entails and that link between the two. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And of course, your image as a company as well is also about how you are perceived, but then the reputation brings everything together. It's now it's your brand. It's about everything you've put in the brand. It's about everything that you've done. In fact, it's about your performance. It's about your behavior. It's about how you come across. That's really how your reputation is. So that's the context for today. So I have a couple of, well, more than a couple of questions for Arinze to start off the conversation. And I think the first question I have for him is context setting. From a business leader perspective, how would you define reputation? I mean, from business leader perspective now, and how important is this to you as a business owner? You've worked in many different contexts around the world, multinational organization, different countries, different continents, diverse cultures, complexities, you know, stakeholder and all of that. And now you are now in the context of your own firm, running your own independent consulting firm, also still doing the same type of work, but different from a different from agent side or external side rather than from within the company side. So how would you define reputation from your perspective?
Thanks a lot. Excellent question. I think reputation is something that speaks to how you are externally perceived. So sometimes you have to really open yourself to try to tap into, you know, what other people are saying about you, about your business, about how you operate, about what you stand for as an organization. And sometimes it can be very difficult, you know, to test and actually confirm accurately, you know, how you are perceived. Um, Typically, you tend to have a more or less rosy view of you know who you are and how you operate, how you're perceived, how your external public see you, you know, within your organization, because the things you're doing will check out right when you're looking internally. You will think you're following the right steps. You know, you will be very comfortable in the way that you've been doing things. And if you're also not careful about where you're getting feedback from, you may basically wrap yourself, you know, with very positive, you know, perceptions of how you are seen, how your actions, you know, are interpreted externally as well. So to really dig in to understand what your reputation really looks like, you have to step out of your comfort zone and tap into diverse publics, both those who will naturally give you positive feedback and then those who may not be you know so disposed, you know, for various reasons, recognizing that it is impossible for all the stakeholders that you interact with to be predisposed to giving you positive feedback. So to give an example, if you're a company involved in extraction, for instance, there would always be tension between yourself and the communities from where you are, you know, carrying out your activities. If you're a manufacturing firm, where some of what you need to produce creates certain toxic outcomes, for instance, or generates a certain wake, it's always going to create that tension. So no matter how good you think you are, no matter how well you think your ducks are lined in a row, there is always issues of reputation to manage. And to understand how you are perceived, you have to look at that totality of the areas where there are external publics that will view you positively, and areas where there might be that tension that you need to probe, and your true reputation is in the amalgam of these two views. Of course, somewhere in between these two would be, a whole range of, other stakeholders who will have various views regarding your reputation. So that's really the sort of thing that, as a leader, I would want to be very careful about, to make sure that I expose myself to all these diverse perceptions that then ultimately, on aggregate, shape my reputation.
Okay, thanks. I think the question I like how a lot of what you've said about the value of reputation, how you are perceived, and all of that. But what I want you to narrow down on now is, why is it important? Why is the perspective of all these people? Why is reputation important to any businessman leader? Why should they care? I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? Why? Why?
Absolutely. So again, depending on the industry you're in, I mean, in some industries, it's very straightforward in terms of the link between your reputation and the market outcomes and bottom line impact. For instance, if you're in food and beverages, for instance, I mean, and you have a certain reputation, clearly, that reputation will speak to your sales, the way that your products are perceived, and even your ability to command a premium position in the market, and ultimately your longevity in that market. I mean, for some products, have attracted that kind of reputation that they become synonymous with the products themselves, because that reputation has been built over time. Even some companies that then end up producing other products, those other products that they have introduced into new markets are automatically conferred with the same reputation as for their mainline products, at the beginning. So clearly, in some industries, there is that direct line. In some other industries, it's a bit more sort of indirect, and you still need to work hard, at it, to be able to connect the thread between your reputation and your bottom line impact. And I think the way to look at that is to see reputation as long-term capital, a cathedral that needs to be built carefully, one brick at a time, recognizing that in itself it is value, but also that uh, you can leverage it to to generate positive income, to generate revenue for your company, to attract talent into your organization, and so on. So there are so many sort of positive streams that speak to why it is essential to manage your reputation. It is good business. It is good, for positioning yourself in society, particularly when you're thinking longer term. So if you're not a fly-by-night business, then it's important that you carefully craft your reputation and defend it, because it is also the pathway to today's revenue, and then to your longevity, to your ability to stay in that space far into the future. So it's a very powerful why. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, I mean, I like what you said about reputation building long-term capital. I think that's the key. It's very, very key. I also liked how you talked about the fact that in some industries, it is quite apparent. The connection between reputation and business is apparent. But I see that in our local environment, a lot of business leaders struggle to see the link. They really do. They really struggle to see the link. And they are unable to, I mean, they're unable to quantify that they are unable to realize that the only thing that sets them apart, the only reason why they're in business is because of trust and reputation, credibility. And that once that credibility is gone, regardless of the business, and that's why people talk about vote of no confidence in a leader. Once that, anything cast an aspersion on that, your reason for being is threatened, or the reason for you continuing in that business is threatened. So the next question I have sort of falls into that, still with that frame of reference and thinking. What role does an MD have in managing the reputation of a company? And whose responsibility is it to manage the reputation of a company? And when I say, even though we're saying company, we're talking in a business leader perspective, but this can apply to institutions, public sector, just as you also support people in the public sector, clients in the public sector. Whose responsibility is it really? Is it the leader? Is it the staff? Is it the communications director or the communications leader? Whose responsibility is it to manage the reputation of a company?
Thank you very much. So, to the extent that we think about reputation as something that is inextricably intertwined with long-term value, something that has to do with establishing long-term capital for that organization, then ultimately, whoever is at the apex of that organization must ride point in terms of driving the reputation agenda, and that person is the CEO. So it's really important that that principle is fully understood as well. Of course, some people will argue that there are issues around personality factors that might incline a CEO to sometimes behave in ways that may not always align with the careful building and establishment of the reputation of an enterprise. But it's when things like that happen, they are outliers. And it's important to recognize that that CEO represents that organization the way an ambassador represents a country. So it's absolutely key that there is a recognition in any organization, even in organizations that employ people who sometimes are referred to as image makers, or people who are in the communications profession. So those individuals are very important in providing the professional strategy and input around how communications are managed, and how all the elements in terms of image making, public positioning, and so on. All those things that help to properly help that organization sit where it should in the public space. Those individuals are absolutely key, but they are there to support the CEO and guide the CEO into managing the reputation of the enterprise, to continue to build that long-term capital by steady accretion, including all the twists and turns that may be necessary in that journey. So it's absolutely clear that again, in some companies, you would want to see the CEO play this sort of role very visibly. For instance, if you're the CEO of an entertainment enterprise, obviously you will be out there. You need to be seen every day. But if you're the CEO of a certain type of enterprise where discretion is absolutely key, for instance, an organization set up to conduct discrete investigations. Even though you are not out there, basically speaking all the time and trying to shape your public image in a particular highly visible way, underground and in accordance with the ethos of that profession and that business activity, you still are wearing the crown of someone who is leading the charge in shaping the reputation of that organization. You are the one conducting the right conversations with the right group of stakeholders, establishing with them at every turn, at every opportunity, why your company or your organization is the preferred partner, to deal with. To that extent, you have a very serious reputation building and management role. So it sits squarely on the shoulders of the MD and CEO, and then of course with support from relevant professionals in the communication space.
So yeah, thanks for that. And I agree with you. And I think most CEOs would agree with you that, yeah, I mean, of course, they are responsible for everything. The buck stops with them. My observation has been, though, that the CEOs don't have a problem when it comes to the steady state operations, engagement, when things are going well. It is when those things are not going well, like when you have issues, and then when which may now require you to deal with stakeholders that are not traditional. In other words, in fact, they're not even people that you recognize as stakeholders. Sometimes there are just some people on social media saying certain things, or one NGO, I don't even know where they came from, they have no business with my facility, they why are they getting involved in this issue? Uh, you know eh, how, I mean, is from your perspective, how would you say you observe in our local environment how CEOs act in that way as opposed to how they should act? So now let's talk about business leaders in a small, medium, or large scale context in Nigeria in particular. Let's focus this on Nigeria. Although I see that there is a lot of similarity even outside of the world, because I think some of these issues, they are universal. The people that get it. The people that don't get it don't get it, regardless of which part of the world they live in. It's just that I think because regulation is stronger in some other places, it makes it easy. Certain things are more apparent in our environment than in others. But what advice would you give, or what do you think should be the way in which small business, medium, and large business leaders, what kind of approach should they adopt in terms of issues management when there is an issue? An issue has come up against your company and your firm, something you could not even have imagined. It's not even being raised. I mean, it's not something that you could ever have imagined would have been maybe an allegation against the company or something, or one crisis or one legal issue, something that just went out of hand. How would you advise small and medium? Because what I have observed in my practice as an independent consultant is that I think that the big business leaders understand this much more. So a lot of what we're saying today, I don't think is necessarily for the big players who have branches all over Nigeria, or national presence, or continental presence, or international presence, or global presence. Those people, they get it in varying levels of degrees. But let's focus now on the people who are small brands. So a small scale brand, and we see it sometimes on social media, a dissatisfied customer, medium scale, and then what you would call large in terms of, well, they're not necessarily national, but they're a big brand, they employ quite a number of people. What kind of approach should they take to issues management? How do they even recognize when something has become an issue? Is really the thing, I think.
No, thanks a lot. I think the what I'll do is I'll start with sort of a broader observation. So it seems to me that the way reputation management and issues of reputation may be addressed in, say, mature sort of capitalist contexts in Western countries, etc., um, might seem a bit more sort of sophisticated, forward-looking, etc. Today. But if we look back maybe 100, 200 years to when some of those companies were emerging, it seems to me that they were struggling with the same things. And a lot of the corporate mortalities at that time also tended to track incidents of reputation, etc., that were not properly managed. And some of those companies then went down as a consequence. Now, what was happening in the background was also that various regulations were, springing up. Institutions overseeing some of these transactions were also maturing, compelling participants in the market space to adopt certain minimum ways of working and certain norms as well. And those norms then are infused into how society makes expectations on actors in that field, and shapes how they also build their reputation. Now, bringing that to our own context here, we are still sort of maturing some of those aspects. Some of the institutional safeguards are still under development, and the actors therefore have sort of free reign to operate, and they can afford therefore to take certain liberties, it seems to me, as well. The other thing to comment on here is that whereas in other places the impact of a failure to manage reputation is mostly soon and certain, in our context, because some of these other guardrails are not there, it might not be there, or the delay, or it might be delayed. And as a result, there may be a misperception of the need to prioritize how issues of reputation are managed. The third thing I would sort of add is in terms of the kind of preparation or training or exposure that many business leaders of these small and medium scale organizations sort of go through as well. And you'll find out that for some of them, there is that sort of gap in how they have gone through processes of development, of building up their leadership skills, their management skills, to be able to recognize some of the more important things to manage, of which reputation must be among the top 4 or 5. And when you look at their scale order of preference, and you have chats with some of them, they don't seem to have that awareness. So those would be the things that I would sort of want to draw attention to, why they may be predisposed to that, because they don't see that immediate impact. And there is nothing there in that space that immediately would penalize them and give them soon and certain feedback when they mismanage their reputation. Of course, there have been some very bad cases where, as a result of a failure to pay attention to reputation issues, such organizations eventually, sort of crashed and basically disappeared as well. But is that sufficient, as an incentive to make those leaders of small and medium organizations prioritize reputation management? I think the it's an open question that is that is out there. For as long, in my view, for as long as that impact is not soon and certain, as long as you don't have business leaders who are intentionally educated about the importance of reputation management, then it could be the case that they will continue to struggle until some of those fundamentals change.
I think thanks for this, Arinze. I like what you've just said now, because you've really touched on some very important things. And I do hope a lot of communications professionals are listening, because what you've just said is funny. You and I haven't had this conversation, but you've pretty much landed. We're aligned on this. There's some things we're misaligned on, but this one we're aligned on this point. My reflection has been that you're absolutely right, because sometimes with these issues, there is not soon and certain impact. So a lot of business leaders, even in some of the large organizations, they do not see any reason to proactively invest in reputation. Till today, it surprises me that people set up companies and they don't have a communications person on payroll. I'm stunned. In 2024, as in, even if you don't have somebody on payroll, I mean, like you're not big enough to have someone. At least you just like you would have a lawyer. I would assume there'll be someone that if there's an issue, you can call on, and you need to have had that relationship before the issues come up. But people have you have like 100 people on payroll, and not one is a communications professional. It's stunning. And you are most of them producing products that are being used in the public. So it's very likely that one day you're going to have an issue that your normal operations will not be able to handle. It is highly likely. So I think there's a lot of awareness, and I like what you said about um, some leaders also not prioritizing their leadership training skills. I think honestly, this has been my observation as well, and I think this is where the big companies get it better, because in a lot of the big companies there's mandatory leadership training as you go up the ladder. It's not whether you want to, before you move into a particular job, even if you didn't do the training before you got the job, after immediately you get the job, there's certain leadership training that comes away. So you get to realize, and sometimes even your handover notes. In fact, many of these leaders, they get the reputation targets in is part of the handover in the big organizations. Of course, there's a lot of money involved, there's investors, so nobody's going to allow you to come and spoil, you understand, people's money is at stake, so the stakes are higher, so probably that is why. I think what this then does for us is, I think there's a huge challenge, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this. My personal, because I reflect on this a lot, because as a trainer, as a consultant, and somebody who coach and mentor a lot of young professionals coming up, I see the kind of challenges that communications practitioners have, particularly when they work in the organizations that are like this, where either the business leader just thinks, oh, you're just here to organize events for me, or yeah, it's calendar and diary that you do for me once a year, that's all I care about, or place adverts, and they don't realize that there's a whole issues or reputation management space. So my sense is, I've come to realize that the first task that a communications practitioner has to have is how to create space and support for even their role, even within the organization. And it's a unique challenge, because I find that, I mean, an HR person, when they come, they don't need to do that, because people already know. It's either they hired you for payroll, or they hired you for compensation and benefits, or they hired you for industrial relations. There's already work which the company needed, and they know they need it. And in fact, just like you said, if they don't do that work, there's going to be soon and certain impact. The same thing with the legal person. There is stuff, either you're working on tax law, you're working on commercial law, you're working on existing litigation, or just general counsel stuff. So there's already, nobody needs, you don't have to create a space for support for your work, because the legal, the regulatory environment has already set what that ground is like. To a very large extent, I mean, contracting and procurement, you also don't have that challenge, because if there are contracts that I need to execute, I need a subject matter expert who's going to wade through all of that for me. Make sure I do competitive pricing, make sure that I get the best deals, value for money, return on investment. It's already sure. But in our space, it's not like that at all. You can, if you're not careful as a comms practitioner, you can actually be hired in an organization and not do anything from January to December. So what advice will you give to comms? And some people come in, they are very young in the organization. That's their first job, out of school 2 years, and they're in an organization that just leaves them to rot in a corner of a room. And what kind of advice will you give to such practitioners as a business leader, please?
Thank you very much. I think the way you described it, and with reference to various other sort of functions, is really interesting for me. But you'll be surprised that when you talk to people in those functions, they might have a different view. They will be saying exactly what you're saying
I'll be
about
very
the
surprised.
dilemma of people in communications. I can tell you for sure. So I think so. It's a broader problem, and maybe the key to that is to begin with what the business or organization exists to do. What is the core? Why are you there? What is that business doing? What are the outcomes that you're chasing? What does success look like? And therefore, what is your role in producing that successful outcome? I think sometimes we get so immersed in the doing that we forget the why. So it's to go back to that fundamentals. What does this business exist to do? And to ask yourself, to what extent do you really fundamentally understand that? And how do you locate your role in what that business is doing? Whether it's an entertainment business, whether it's an engineering company, whether it's an agricultural enterprise, whether it's a public institution set up to regulate, one business activity or the other. Whether you're working in a public ministry, regardless of where you find yourself, the first thing is, what does that organization exist to do? And how can you define your role in helping that organization achieve that outcome? Once you're unable to do that, do not expect to be taken seriously in that organization. You will be reduced to the level of a mere administrator who will be assigned scraps to attend to on a reactive basis in that organization. And this has nothing to do with communications. It is the same thing whether you're in the legal profession, whether you're in HR, whether whatever it is that you're doing. So I think that for me is the starting point. Second one is, if you fundamentally understand the business and fundamentally understand the value that you can bring to that business, then you should be able to work out in cold, clear terms what the critical metrics are that underline your contribution to that organization, to that business. If you know what those metrics are, and those are not metrics that you just self-generate, those are metrics that everyone should recognize in that organization as being materially impactful in terms of the business outcomes that you're chasing. Once you've landed on those metrics, the next logical step is then to organize them into the performance indicators, both the ones that are key and the ones that are subordinate. And the more sophisticated outfits with large, systems, etc., can then move into dashboarding as well. Once you're able to do that, you can then see line of sight. Okay, as a professional in this space, if I do this, this is how it is going to lead to changes in my cash register. If I do this, this is how it is going to affect long-term positioning in this area. If I do this, this is how it is going to improve what the company or organization does in this or that space in a way that is carefully metricated, provable, and that helps the CEO, of course, to look good as well. So, which is always nice. So that's what I would say. That it is tough, it is challenging work, it is cerebral work, and it is work that must be done as a joint undertaking, so that everyone recognizes those metrics as what is important for the business, recognizes those KPIs as things that need to be measured, and that speak to real value contribution in that business organization. I pause.
Yeah, I like your pause. I think, I mean, that's you're really spot on, and I wish I don't know if we have any young practitioners or early stage practitioners on the call with us, but if you are, please pay attention to what Arinze is saying, because this is really from experience. And I would like to say, if you have any questions for us, please drop it in the comment section so that we can take it online while we're still here. We have a few minutes left, so we can take questions and comments. But if we don't get anything from within the room, we will go ahead. I think I would just like to recap a couple of things that Arinze said, which is really important. And that is that, first of all, he says that we're not alone, that it happens to other people in the other professions. Well, I beg to differ, but he's entitled to his own opinion. But he says it's important for you to understand the business. And that's true. That's what I have observed as well. To be honest, I mean, if I want to face my fellow communications practitioners, I think too many of us want to do communications cut and paste, copy and paste. I see many people, I mean, I've had cases whereby I have had people bring communications plans to me. And when I see it, I do not see any connect with the communication strategy or the plan with the business. In fact, I'll tell the person, I say, do you know you can carry this plan and take it to MTN and drop it on their table? And they will think it's part of their work, because it's not reflecting the business reality. I'm not even seeing the name of any of the company's projects in your comms plan. You could literally have taken this from anywhere. There's no relevance. There's no connect. If I look at a communications plan, I should be able to tell the kind of business that requested that plan. I don't need any, I mean, by reading, just like a legal document, if you read a legal document, you can tell whether what it is. You can tell whether it's an injury case. You can tell whether it's commercial. You can tell whether it's from oil industry. You can tell whether it's retail, pharmaceutical. You will see the language of the industry in the legal document, because they need to specify it so that it is clear that we are talking about this. They will reference it if they're talking about food. If it's a contract document talking about food, they will tell you the name of the brand, the product, the regulatory whatever concerning it, even though it's, and then there will be the legal language. It will be infused and embedded. So even me reading it, I will learn about the business just by reading the legal documents. The same thing with contract documents. But come strategy, when I see come strategy, all I will see is you'll be talking Twitter, Instagram, this and that. I will not see anything about your business. I can't tell what you are supporting. So why then would any business leader take you seriously? Honestly, I mean, really, why will any business leader? So I think our starting point for a lot of us, and I think we're not training our comms professionals well enough. When you enter a new sector, just like we know, you have to learn. Your first task is to learn what is the business trying to achieve. And if it means you're going to sit down on the tables of the business leaders, booking time 30 minutes, 1 hour, that is what you should do. Don't be coming up with plan and say sitting, and you heard what he said, the targets are jointly agreed. You do not create targets on your table. I mean, I remember one day I was telling somebody, I said, me, now I have a small independent consulting firm. You want to create a com strategy, you come and work with me, and you want to create a com strategy. You want to create it in my absence. I say, how? When the vision of the organization is in my head, you have not started until you have a conversation with me. You need to engage me first. Before I don't care what kind of expertise you are coming with. If you have not spoken to me, you have not started work. Don't even write your first draft. Don't give me any thoughts. Talk to me first. After you've spoken to me, then go and write your thoughts. Then you can come back. Because I have framed the context of the organization for you. I've told you what we are trying to achieve this year. I will give you a rundown of what last year is, what we've learned from last year. And I will also tell you what I expect from your role and how it fits in with what every other person is doing. That's the starting point. And I would like to hear from those of us who are on the call. I can say a comment from Hope, where he says the impact from AI generated documents. But Hope, AI just started last week, so let's not use AI as an example. This thing has been happening since when I've been seeing it for decades. I've been seeing it. I've been in this profession now. I mean, my first PR job was in 1990 when I worked in NNPC as a youth corper. So for you to understand, I served in 1990. And since then, I've been doing public relations. So let's not talk about AI. I was in the workforce when computer came in. So it's not AI. It's not an AI issue at all. Is we not understanding that communications, I think a lot of people, again, the history of our profession, many people came in different ways. So the practice has evolved around us. And I think the teaching around the practice is catching up. We're trying to catch up. But the learning is just, let's just say the practice has gone ahead of the learning and all of that. So I think I think there's opportunity. My advice to anybody, if you are working in an organization where you are the only comms person, you are young, and you have business leaders that you need to influence and you really don't know what to do, you have to go and get training outside. You have to join professional networks. You have to find a way to build your competencies somehow. But what you cannot do is sit down and, like Arinze said, if you do not locate yourself within the business of the organization or institution that you're working in, what will they do to you? They will assign you scraps. Thank God is the one that said it, because usually I'm the one that gives such brutal feedback. He said they will assign scraps. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this, because honestly, I can tell you for free, I see a lot of people with scraps as they are not, oh Lord, anyway, let me not even just go there. So I think I'm seeing some comments here. Let me just be sure. Hope said it's getting worse. It's getting worse, but at least it's still bad. So yes. Hope says, well done, Arinze. I'm in another PM trade. Okay. Yeah. So that it's all from Hope. Okay, thanks for your comments. So if anybody has any more questions and comments, please just share it. So I think the next question for Arinze, we have about 15 minutes more, is that I want you to give us a bit of your personal experiences now, and things that you have also observed, what has informed your perspective about the importance of reputation management in your business? I mean, how do you as I mean and related to that is, how do you as a business owner manage the reputation of your firm? But I want you to spend some time on your own personal experience, because I have observed that some business leaders get it. Some business leaders, and everywhere I go is like that. There are the people who get it, there are those who don't. And it's not easy to tell why it's like that, because some of them, you can't say, oh, it's people from this type of background, or oh, it's these people, some people that you thought they will get it, they don't get it. Some people that so, but the people that get it, you can tell, because they will even welcome your presence as a comms person. They will contribute, they will tell you what needs to be done. They are ready to try things. They are even very proactive. You are even the one telling them, please, no, calm down, we're not ready for this now, that kind of thing. So just tell us, what was it for you? What made the difference for you? Have you always, the views you've expressed here, which, as we know, is not typical for a lot of business leaders, what was your journey to get into this place? I mean, how, and tell us a personal story of how, if you've had an example whereby your reputation, something that happened to you personally in your business life that made you tie reputation with business impact and business relevance.
Thanks a lot. I think sometimes we are products of our background as well. So in terms of, for me, in terms of personal things, mine is something very, very, I would say, very, very intimate. So my late father was a school principal and retired as a supervising principal of schools. And growing up, the only thing I, would ever hear would be about the sort of person that he was. Always a stickler for doing things the right way. So, over time, he sort of established that reputation as someone to be trusted, as someone who, when he makes a commitment, he ensures that he, works to fulfill it. As someone who maintained records, and then even after serving and returning to the community, he took on community leadership roles. And it was very interesting for us when he passed and we were looking through his documents. We were absolutely gobsmacked about the extent of his meticulous record keeping,
Wow.
down to naira, the last naira and kobo. I mean, it's so that sort of thing. We could then see, oh, so this is how this reputation was built over time. It wasn't just about talk. It was one thing layered on top of the other, and everything, basically lining up to speak to the sort of person that he was. It also demonstrated to me how challenging it is to also build a reputation, because it's not something you just talk about. It's something you have to live, and you have to live it day in, day out. For me personally, I started my working career actually in banking, and that is a business where trust is everything. Trust is everything about banking, as well as accuracy, as well, and transparency. And one of the roles that I played in the bank, believe it or not, was as head of electronic data processing in our largest branch. And a lot of people find it very, strange that, but it taught me something, because there, at the end of every day, it's not like these days when the computer does a lot of the hard work for you. Then you had to do the trial balance manually at the end of every day's work. And if you had a difference of 2 kobo, you had to find it. So these things sort of shaped who I am in terms of how I think about the way things ought to be done, and the way to behave. My next job after that was in an engineering company as well. where they are very, very careful about accuracy and about making promises, that they need to keep as well. And that taught me quite a lot. And this is very large, multinational, highly structured, with all the sorts of things that you need to do there, and you're careful. Anything that you uh, do out of turn that doesn't align with what you said publicly can then be used, against you. So really also learned, a lot. As a consultant in this stage of my life, I found out that what I do, how I'm perceived is everything. So 99.9% of the briefs that have come my way have come because of both my reputation and the reputation that I've tried to build around my business. And this includes the commissions we accept and the commissions that we reject, the organizations we choose to work with and the organizations that we would rather not do business with. So there is gain and there is also pain in that, in having to make some of those difficult choices. No matter how juicy or attractive that opportunity looks like, to be able to say, this is not something that, this is not an establishment that I would like to be associated with, even as a service provider. So those would be the sort of things around my own personal experience. My father as a beacon of sort of what a solid reputation looks like. My path, career path from banking through an engineering outfit now to consulting, and the way that I've come to think about certain things and the choices that I've had to make. Those are the things that have helped me to sort of define how I think about reputation and the necessity of being proactive in managing both my personal reputation and that of my business.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that, Arinze. So I like how you draw examples from your father and personal life, and I think again, this is again about leadership journey, and and for some people, maybe that's why some people get it and some people don't. It's really about their journey. For some people, maybe it was a personal thing like you, and for others, perhaps it happened in school, educational journey. Maybe it's also career journey and career path. Seeing being in a context where they saw the direct connect, how a business failed literally because of the reputation. And you're right, as a consultant, it's our trust that we are trading on. 100%. It's your reputation. It's your reputation. It's you're as good as your last brief. I mean, so really, the reputation from your last brief is what carries on. You got a good brief and you messed it up with the wrong people. You're going to have it will take a while. So, like he said, we're building to a very large extent, and for many of us, because we came from the career, so you're building on the reputation you built for a whole lifetime of work, and then you still continue to build on that because you also don't want to be a has been. So people can say, well, like, when I knew her when she, or I knew him when he was this, but are you still that person? So you have to continue to oil that reputation, and that's the role of what communications should help people do. That's why you need to be proactive, because your reputation is people will say, oh well, when I knew her she used to be like this, but they need to be able to say this is who you are now. So you have to be able to continue to show that, and we see that happen with brands where people are like, they used to be back in the day, they were very good in doing this, but we've not heard anything from them, we don't know. So don't take people's don't take your audience for assumption or your market for assumption and assume that because you used to be something, then the world has stood still and that perception will stay there. Exactly like Arinze said, you have to continue to work on that reputation, both by the things that you do and the things that you choose, you refrain from doing. So we have a comment from Emmanuel here where he says, addressing the issue of hierarchical mistreatment within large organizations, especially prevalent in sectors like major IOCs in third world countries, is crucial for fostering a positive work environment and maintaining ethical standards. How do you suggest implementing policies or initiatives to ensure fair treatment and respect for all staff members, regardless of their rank or employment status within such organizations? So, Emmanuel, honestly, that's an HR question. And you are right, it's an HR question. And I think it's something that it's a very it's not something that okay. Should I ask Arinze, do you want to take a stab at that? Because I'm not really sure. It's there are many facets of that kind of question. So let me just take a little. Let me give my own view, and then I'll give it to Arinze to say something. I think now we have a cultural. When you say hierarchical mistreatment within large organizations, I don't know if you're talking public sector or private sector. I will assume it is private sector. I think we're going through a phase in our part of the world where some of the things that we used to do in the past, it's no longer going to be as easy to do it. Why do I say so? Gen X, my generation, was a very tolerant generation. We don't like to rock the boat. So we stomached a lot of things because we felt we don't want to rock the boat. The generation before us, they were oppressors. They are still oppressing up to today. That's my view. But Gen X were very tolerant. The millennials are less tolerant than Gen X is. Gen Z does not even have their time. So I believe that over time, some of these things will have to change, but the pace of change will differ by sector, by organization. It's now left for, and when you, like I said, I don't know. I mean, I think some of the ones that will be slower, maybe public sector will be the slowest. Even private sector has lagged more than I would have expected. But again, you see a sector, the different, the how would I say it? Experience is different per sector. Banking, all of them have their culture and things. Change can only happen from within. That's just it. It has to be individuals within the organization advocating for a better way of doing things here and there. For as long as we tolerate it as within our sectors, it will continue. I'll just leave it there. And because again, when you use words like fair and mistreatment, it's a bit you can't I can't make a judgment based on that, because whose idea of fair? Are you talking compensation? Are you talking benefits? Are you talking respect for people? It's a bit whatever. But whatever fair, every organization has to determine for themselves what fairness means and what respect for people means. I think from the comms perspective, what would be helpful is, because we also work with HR, is you advocating for the organization to come up with a commitment on those areas, which you can then communicate and socialize and then help to build a culture change. That's how comms people can come in. But if there is no commitment to it at the leadership level, it's not going to fly. So, but then there's some things you can do in the influencing space. Let me give it over to Arinze. Arinze, any thoughts? I don't know if you can see the comments on your right hand.
Yeah, no, I will tee up from what you said. I think, very briefly, I would say that if we make an assumption, because the assumption here is that this is something prevalent in some IOCs, and the summary of it is really around discriminatory treatment. Yeah, whether that discrimination stems from hierarchy or from the different categories of staff and so on, and so forth. So, but if the fundamental assumption is that within those organizations they are careful about protecting and promoting their reputation, then certainly they have a powerful incentive to be less tolerant of those kinds of behaviors or conduct, within those organizations. And therefore, it will not be their, if you like, natural tendency to, to begin to do those things that could ultimately hurt their reputation. Even though one can, make some of these assumptive sort of statements, it is possible that in some of those organizations you could have some of these unacceptable practices, going on as well, and that can thrive in contexts where the institutions that will act as a check on those behaviors are weak. And those institutions will include even the judiciary, because if you want to make a complaint about discrimination and then you go to the law courts, and then it takes a long time, too long for you to get justice, etc., then it might just encourage that kind of behavior. Or you are in a context where the labor market is extremely weak, people are desperate for work, and therefore they will accept just about anything. And we've seen some cases in Nigeria where companies owned by certain nationalities tend to behave in certain ways, etc. So it's possible. If you are a communications professional in that context, what should you do? I think that for me would be the fundamental question. How should you address things like that as well? It goes back to how you connect the impact of reputation to what your organization does, how it affects bottom line impact, and the kind of conversations that need to be had in that organization about what those behaviors are signaling externally and how it can impact the reputation and ultimately the bottom line. I think that would be my sort of general advice to communications practitioners who find themselves in that kind of context.
Thanks, Arinze, for that. Actually, I had missed the fact that even though I read it through, that he was actually talking specifically about IOCs in third world countries. So thank you for bringing that home very well in your response. And I think what Arinze has said is right in that I like what he said about behaviors that are signaling. What is this signaling outside? I think the role of communications, I remember in my former job, they used to say this to us, is we bring the outside in perspective and the inside out. We take the inside out and we bring the outside in. So if those things are beginning to, they are signaling, or rather it's become pervasive to the point that it's likely to become an issue, it has to be red flagged. I mean, for me, I don't think we gain anything by trying to sweep things under the carpet. If it's an issue, when you, to your question about how do you do this, how do you suggest implementing policies, is to raise the issue. So it should be raised. HR communications, they should have a conversation with business leaders, open and honest conversation, talk about behaviors, acceptable conduct, socialize it, make a commitment to it, and keep it. And of course, if people then, if you, I mean, I always like organizations to come up with a list of desired behaviors. We do not want people to do this, and undesirable behaviors. That's the way to drive culture change. For instance, if you say it is not acceptable for you to raise your voice to any staff, that already makes people know that if you raise your voice and somebody makes a report, there's going to be an investigation. So really, it's really just about making sure that leadership drives the commitment that they do. But what I like about your question is that I think that's an example of proactive issues when you identify a potential issue, because that's another part that we didn't talk about a lot here. When we actually run our course, a course, we're having a course on issues and crisis management next week. And the first module of that course is going to be talking about the issues identification process. And Emmanuel's question fits very closely to that, because that process is a process about how you identify potential issues. So it may not necessarily be an issue right now, but you identify something that you're saying, this issue, this thing that is happening in this part of our business, if we do not nip it in the bud now, it has the potential to become XYZ. And that, by the way, if anything happens and something gets out in the space, it's going to be a big problem for us. So we always, in my former role as comms practitioners, that was something we used to do, of course, supported by the leadership, where we had a list of issues, which were things we would manage, we would be tracking, just so that they do not explode they do not become unmanageable. So that's part of why we're really talking about issues here. So I like how you said that, in terms of Emmanuel, how you've raised that question, because it's not always about crisis. If all you are learning is how to manage crisis, and you're not thinking about how to identify potential issues, then there's a problem. You should have an issues identification and management process in your organization. And if you don't have one as a comms person, you can actually recommend or advocate for that process. So in the workshop, in our course next week, we're going to be talking about how there's going to be a whole module teaching people how to set up that process within your organization, what it is first of all, and how to set it up so that you can then become a bit more proactive. And again, that issues identification and management process is a way to become part of the business, because that one is no longer so much about, it's not really like, how would I say, it's not really like the publicity side of comms. It's about using communications and engagement to manage issues within the organization and keep them from becoming something that can create a problem for us in the reputation and in the stakeholder space. So we're out of time. And I would just like to say thank you to Arinze for joining. I don't know if there's any last words you have before we bring this to a close. And thank you to everybody who's joined today. Arinze, last words from you. Last
No,
words of
thanks. I
admin.
think I think is the Warren Buffett quote that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and then 5 minutes to destroy it. So let's just bear that in mind. And I think I've enjoyed the conversation. So thank you so much, Shola, for having me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure having you as well. And many thanks to everybody who's joined us today. If you'd like to be a part of our course next week, you can see the registration details scrolling down at the bottom of your screen. Please, or you can send me a DM on LinkedIn. We'll start up a conversation, and it will be lovely to have you next week. Thank you, Arinze, for joining us, and hope you come into our studio again sometime soon. Bye bye, everybody. Thank you for the
Thank you very
conversation.
much. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.